chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. Welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. I am coming at you live from New Orleans. As you can tell, I've got a bit of a head cold, but that's okay. I wanted to be here with you today since we didn't have a show last week. There is so much to talk about. And Audrey Ross, my trade bestie, is joining me as guest today. And so my name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended podcast, as well as the founder of the Blended Pledge. And we couldn't have this show without our show sponsors. So let's hear a little bit from them. So are you ready to find your community? If you're struggling to find a supply chain community of like-minded professionals where you can level up, network, learn about best practices from experts in supply chain, professional development, and marketing, look no further. Because we created the Secret Society of Supply Chain to provide a safe space, a community for everyone in the industry. We offer unique opportunities for everyone to connect, grow in our three distinct value pack communities. One is the supply chainers, two is the woman in supply chain, and three is the creative room. From the learn at your own pace, content-rich approach and exclusive content of the supply chainers to the empowering community-focused space of women in supply chain and the marketing mastermind of the creative room, we mean it when we say there's truly a place for everyone. So head over to secretsocietyofsupplychain.com and find out which community is right for you. Now, I do need to give a shout out today. I got this t-shirt. I don't know if you can see it, TMSA from Rob Boosie, and I wanted to give him a bit of a shout out and make sure he knew that I sported the t-shirt today. It's purple if you can't tell. I know this hotel lighting is not the greatest. All right. Let's get into what is new at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a brand new episode. This is episode 411, and we're bridging the digital divide with SDI. Now we're talking about humans and technology, how they can work together. And SDI really came to the table with so many great ways to make this happen. Now, this really is a deep dive into how you can bring your teams together, what it means for your organization, what it means for your supply chain teams. So go and check that out. Spotify, Apple, over on YouTube, and let us know what you think. All right, next, what have we got? So Relax Talks, they're going to be talking about assortment rationalization. Now that's happening tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. You're not going to want to miss that one because they're going to be talking all about assortment from an inventory standpoint, and you're going to learn so much. So click the attend button because even if you can't attend live, we will send you that recording. And then, of course, Christine Barnhart is going to be going live on Wednesday, June 19th at 10 a.m. Eastern for Supply Chain Unfiltered. And she's talking about how to hack your supply chain for the modern world. So again, click the attend button because we want to send you the recording even if you cannot attend live. Next, I want to say a big thank you to our community because we hit 70,000 followers on LinkedIn just 3 days ago. It's a huge milestone and we could not do it without any of you. So thank you so much to the community, to our teams, and everybody for helping us make that happen. What else have we got? We've got our weekly LinkedIn newsletter. It's called the Let's Talk Supply Chain News. Go and check it out. We just released this just the other day. We do it every week and we come at you with some really great supply chain news, hot topics, what's the latest with our podcast and the content, upcoming events, and so much more. What else have we got? Oh, if you haven't checked this out, I had the opportunity to be featured in an interview with EU Automation. And we explored supply chain innovation. We talked about AI, IoT, simulation, collaboration. And we talked about how these technologies are shaping the future of supply chain management. If you haven't gone to check it out, go and check it out. The link is in the comments on the Let's Talk Supply Chain page, and I'll put it into the page for my personal site just after we end the show. Next, on Thursday, this Thursday coming up, 2 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be moderating a webinar with Supply Chain Brain and Reveal. And one of the guests is from Boot Barn, and we're going to be talking about their parcel shipping transformation with Reveal, what that's looked like, how they've boosted efficiency across stores and online platforms. And if you are a retailer, you won't want to miss this. So we're going to put the link in the comments. You can go ahead and register for that, and I can't wait to see you there. And last but not least, before we bring Audrey up, I've got a brand new monthly hustle. This is my monthly LinkedIn newsletter, and it's From Rock Bottom to Sky High, how failing transformed my life for the better. We've had some really great feedback on this. Thanks so much to everybody who's commented. This has been a lot of fun to write. Every month, I'm sort of sharing with you a little bit about my journey, what I've learned. Yeah, go check it out. The link is in the comments. All right. So I can't believe there was so much to go through. Now it's time to bring up Audrey. Good morning. You're on mute.
Good morning.
There we go. How are you?
Good afternoon. Good evening. I mean, it sounds like you didn't get much sleep, so.
No, I'm not entirely sure what time zone I'm on, where I am, and what's happening tomorrow.
That's actually a lot of us, though, today, especially if you're in logistics and shipping.
Right? There's so many things going on. I mean, just everything that I had to go through with what's happening with Let's Talk Supply Chain, but then in supply chain in general. And I've been learning at TMSA just over the last couple of days around sales and marketing and all sorts of great stuff. So there's lots going on. People are moving and shaking and moving goods and traveling themselves. Anyways, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Audrey Ross. I'm here in Toronto today. I co-founder on working on the Blended Pledge. I'm current president at OIT Toronto, which is the Organization for Women in International Trade here in Toronto. OIT is a women's promotes the advancement of women in business around the world. So we have lots of chapters overseas as well. I get to volunteer with a lot of wonderful global colleagues. So and then there's the logistics and freight, which I keep busy with.
Well, you're going to give us a market update in just a minute. Anyways, for anybody who's watching, I really want to know where you're coming in from. So put a comment in, let us know where you're watching or listening from on my personal LinkedIn, on the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn and YouTube. And I think, Nicole, if you can put that in the private chat for my personal one, because I am not looking at that one today. I only have one screen instead of my regular. All right, let's get into the poll of the week. And so we ask you a question every single Wednesday on the Let's Talk Supply Chain Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, last week we asked you, what is the biggest challenge facing supply chain managers today? Now, we had almost 400 votes, and I think we still have one more week to go. So 47% of you said supply chain disruptions. 25% of you said rising transportation costs. 16% of you said adopting sustainable practices. And 11% of you said managing supplier relationships. Now, we're going to be talking, I think, probably about rising transportation costs, because that's going to be part of your market update. I'm pretty sure we were talking about that last week. But what did you think about this poll? What did you think about the results?
Yeah, I think we've got a few challenges on different fronts. I think we are all in, if we haven't been, or if we're in the middle of, or if we're going through, there's tech adoptions, there's infrastructure builds that we need to do, especially post-pandemic, to kind of regroup ourselves and reevaluate. There are the continually external disruptions, right? So there are these market issues where the global shortcuts have been unavailable. So the route through the Panama Canal, the route through Suez have been unavailable. So there's that sort of routing disruption. There's also been the port incident in Baltimore and some other areas as well. Managing supplier relationships, a lot of us, weren't, if you weren't able to secure a contract, or if you've been trying out different vendor partners, or your vendor partner was bought by a bigger entity, as we've seen with, groups like CEVA, CMA, CGM's been in a buying mode, Maersk's been in a buying mode. So there's also new relationships that you're contending with as if you're a BCO like me. And then, sustainable practices. It's not I think we're all motivated to do it. I think sometimes, scope 3 has been the last piece of a company's ESG goals. So all of those things are affecting us in a big way. And it just depends on what company you're at, what region you're in, and sort of what your focus is.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be talking about sustainable practices in the third article today. And it's really interesting because we talk about all the companies needing to look at the practices, figure out which one is best for them, maybe low-hanging fruit to start with, and then work towards some bigger goals. But there are some things that are coming into play that I don't think anybody saw happening around some legal battles. And so we're going to see two sides of the coin in this discussion today around sustainability practices and what we can do, what we can't do, and all sorts of things. But that is a big one, right? And I think, leaders, supply chain teams, managers, professionals, they're already a little bit overwhelmed with, the options of technology that is out there already, let alone stacking sustainability practices on that. All right. So why don't you give everybody a bit of a market update? Like, what are you seeing? I know you're seeing some rising transportation costs. Let's talk a little bit about that. What should people be expecting right now? What are you going through at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really great people, who are more attuned to what's happening than I am. So on the situation at hand. So of course, I'm following Lars Jensen, Stephanie Loomis as well. There's a few other people who are talking about the why this is happening. So you definitely want to delve into that. There's definitely been even some news coverage on it. But I think the challenges coming out of that May week-long holiday in China is that we're seeing rising prices and a lack of capacity. So we had some blank sailings. There's a lack of capacity, and in response, I think we've had companies kind of trying to advance or accelerate their shipping. So we're seeing peak season sort of immediately, like in May and June, when we normally would see our peak season in sort of June, July, August. So we are. The response to that, of course, if you can't get capacity, is it becomes a premium, right? So if you do really want capacity, it has to go out this week. Then all of a sudden, we've been quoted diamond tier service levels. They make up these really sort of VIP kind of terms. So that's I've seen $14,000 per container for sort of the premium services, and then the market average right now that I'm seeing is sort of between a 7 and a 9,000 per container, so per 40-foot GP container. And that's a hit. I think, I don't think we weren't planning for rock bottom kind of pricing on containers. We don't usually do that, but we anticipate, if you're paying, anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 per container, depending on your route, I had always felt that was sort of a fairly reasonable cost expectation. But we're getting close to almost double that, which is really hard when most of us have planned this pricing. These projects are already costed. It can be months in advance, right? Some of this stuff was priced and sold seven months ago. And now, that project, is going to look like a mess because of this sort of spike in prices. And the response I was kind of explaining to my colleagues is that we all problem solve in the same way, in that we're all like, oh my gosh, everything's shipping now, so we should also ship now. You're like, actually maybe taking a pause and re-looking at timing and seeing if we can kind of ship things out and book them a little later, so everybody's doing forecasting, everybody's trying to like pre-book, and give the forwarders the information that they need so that they have a longer view, which is all good anyways. But yeah, it's the response to all of these things is typically that we just make the situation worse as a supply chain community. So
yeah,
don't expect any relief anytime soon, right?
Well, if any of you out there that are watching and listening, if you're going through this, we want to know from you if you're seeing the rise in transportation costs. I mean, Audrey, you're talking a little bit about movements into Canada, but also into the US, I think.
US, Europe.
Far East, Europe. Yeah. So we want to know if you're experiencing this as well and what that has looked like for you. So make sure to put that in the comments. Now, I've got a few shout outs over on my personal LinkedIn. I want to say hi to Larry Lung, Mike Mike is tuning in from Copenhagen, Seth from Atlanta, and Peter from Wales, Leo from Toronto. Thank you so much all for joining us today.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into our first article. So our first article talks about how Apple has cut 14 suppliers over conflict minerals. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up is because this is around sustainability, right? It's one of the things that supply chain managers are feeling challenged with. But this isn't just about suppliers over conflict minerals. This really is just the starting point. Now, since 2009, Apple has cut 25 manufacturing suppliers and 231 suppliers in general. Now, that's a lot, but what it means is they are looking at all of their different partners from a sustainability standpoint. And if we aren't there, right, as vendors, as freight forwarders, as partners, as technology partners to help them reach their goals, this is going to come down the line, right? Sourcing is at the top. What does that mean for everybody else down the chain? And so that's why I wanted to bring this one up, because I think it's important to really understand how important and what a focus they're putting on, obviously, sustainability and the partners that they're working with. What did you think about this?
Yeah, I definitely think it's one of those areas where, if we've been behind in getting information, and thanks, Aman. Yeah, they're all going up. If we've been behind, or we think that people aren't really looking at this, it's all of a sudden it's going to come and hit us really fast. That people, because I think, and it's because we're starting to see what we didn't have before. Maybe was that shareholders and companies at a high level and stock exchanges and investors are making different decisions based on ESG outcomes, right? So now we're seeing that sort of really fall down into our day to day, where maybe we didn't see it to the same extent. And unless you were in a certain regulatory environment, this wasn't necessary. This wasn't maybe a vital piece of what your day to day was. But when we're finding this as well, it's you're investigating your supply chain to a much deeper degree than you ever did before. Hopefully not all of us, but most of us. And it's based on these, ESG and sustainability, but also based now on, we have the UFLPA forced labor regulations in the US. We have forced labor regulations in Canada and Europe. So we're also taking a view on, okay, in your main factory, your main manufacturing partner, okay, everything's clear. What about those raw materials? What about their raw materials for their raw materials? So this tier of supply chains is really being investigated and scrutinized. And if vendors can't provide the documentation or aren't willing to do, we're doing I've seen companies do audits to update their legislation. You're seeing EcoVadis coming up around for a lot of people. We're seeing ISO standards kind of, that used to be a big thing when I got started in the, sort of in my job in the early 2000s, 90s. And now it's like, it's come back into the thing. Oh, do you have this ISO? Do you have that ISO? Like, so these standardizations and certifications on a business level, and Apple is going to expect, they're going to be scrutinized very highly by regulators. So they absolutely have to have the best and most transparent and accurate data. So if you want to be working with the Apples and the large retailers and these brand names, then as a vendor, as a manufacturer, and even a small business, you've got to be able to level up to that.
Yeah, well, and they're talking about they want their entire supply chain carbon neutral by 2030.
Yeah,
so they're definitely
in like 5 years.
Yeah, pretty much, right. But one of the things that I thought was interesting is that they said that removal of suppliers really is the last resort, because it really doesn't help. Right? No. They want to be able to try to help the situation, make it better, make an impact. And so from what it says in this particular article is that they try to do everything that they possibly can, hopefully, not to get to the stage where they are removing suppliers, because that's really not their goal and not exactly what they want to be doing. But the suppliers obviously have to be willing to work within the parameters and have an audit. Most of the suppliers that have been removed have refused to be part of an audit. And that's what's going to get you into trouble, I think, every single time.
And they can't seem to level up or do the work that's needed in the time period that's needed to get there. And
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to say hi to Afifi over on my personal LinkedIn as well. All right, let's get to our second article. Now, you were the one that sent this one to me, which I love because I'm always looking for really great articles around really great stories. So if anybody has any articles to share that talk about supply chain in a different way, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn because I'd love to share them on Thoughts and Coffee. Now, this one is talking about how more Canadian women are pursuing careers in truck driving. Now, we've got an organization here in Canada. Well, I'm not here in Canada, but I am usually in Canada, called the Trucking HR Canada. And they're saying that from 2016 to 2021, 43% of drivers in BC are female now. It went up 43% or something like that, or that's total. And it's a really great story about how this one woman has been able to get a career in truck driving. But she said it's one piece that is rewarding for her is the off-road driving, because she's been able to see beautiful places, which you kind of think about, but you don't really think about. And I love that for her. And then also the flexibility. One of the challenges that they're seeing is the bias around physically being able to handle it. Because some of the chains, I believe, on the truck, I can't remember what she called it, weigh like 75 pounds or something like that. And so sometimes that is a bias that comes into play that they have to get over for somebody to be able to give them an opportunity as a truck driver. So you sent this to me. Talk to me about why you wanted to bring this up, what you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I think it highlights a shift in careers that we think people will have, right? We all have our own little inherent bias of who we think works where. Like, what does a truck driver look like? Oh, it's this very strong man, which it could be, but it really can be anyone. And it's nice to see that this, in supply chain, we're expanding and offering greater opportunity, but also it's an interesting job. I mean, if you think about truck driving, not all of us realize how much goes into the transportation of our goods, how many lanes there are, how many routes there are. I have a cousin who's in truck driving, and like the photos and, it's not all fun and games all the time, but like the photos that he's been able to send from the trips that he's experienced cross country in Canada and in the US. I mean, these are beautiful countries. These are beautiful regions. So to be able to have that kind of visual as part of your job experience is wonderful. And I think, around that was another piece around the equipment and around this, like there's these physical requirements, right? And I think I think we get trapped in these, well, you have to be strong to do this job. Do you have to be strong to do a job that we could possibly have a robot or some sort of accommodation or assist to help you with? And is it good for even if you are, a 6'5", 200-pound, he identifier, like, is it good for you to be lifting a 70-pound chain every single day? Are you lifting it properly? Are you bending with your knees? Like, I always, we run into a lot of this kind of perspective of like, well, women don't have the physical strength to do this job. And you're like, why are we insisting that men have the physical strength to do this job when in a lot of cases it's very awkward? You could have, like, how many workplace injuries are there for men that it's just like, oh, well, that's tolerated because, and I'm like, if I can shift the conversation on just those things, like this able-bodied mindset of like, well, if you can't do it, then you can't do this job. And it's like, or we could get like a lift or a lighter chain or a different tech innovation. I don't know, something, but
but it's so true, right? Because at the end of the day, a 75-pound chain isn't good for anybody.
No,
and you're gonna
should be lifting that.
Yeah, nobody should be lifting that. No human should be lifting that. So,
where is the AI and the robots for that?
That's true. We need some robots for that. All right. One of the other things that I really liked about this story is they highlighted another woman who was working at the rail yard, and she was working to move cargo from rail to truck and ended up being a division manager. And so I think it's also another way for us to think about getting into the industry and being able to try different things. There's a lot of different ways for us to be able to be drivers, get into the industry and work our way up through different aspects. And so I thought that was a really great story. So it's a video. We've got it in the comments. go and check it out because Audrey and I really, really liked it. And
Yeah.
it's a
You will too.
conversation that we're very passionate about. All right, clearly. All right, so our last conversation, our last article that we're going to highlight, why are luxury brands waging war on upcycled clothing market? Now, this one was interesting to me because I never really thought about it. I mean, you go on to these sites or these apps that have, pre-loved goods, this one is, more centered around Chanel because there's a particular person, I believe, that's taking some of the Chanel brand clothing and upcycling it. So what that means is changing it into a different piece of clothing, but still showing that brand very prominently. And what it means to the brands is that they don't have any control, right? They don't have any control over their brand. It's affecting sales, and they're worried about counterfeiting. But they're also clashing with sustainability goals. In how do we reuse our clothing and how do we invest in one piece and move it through sort of that circular economy if the brands won't do it themselves? So Audrey, this is very near and dear to your heart, I know, because you've been very active in the fashion community in Toronto. So talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's two-tier interest for me because I'm always interested too in the legalities and what sort of precedent or what direction we'll go with this from a legal and regulatory view. I think it's interesting. I think especially with luxury brands, I mean, the whole thing that makes them luxury is what makes them exclusive, right? Those higher costs. It's a seemingly higher value product. It's a more a better made product, right? Because it's hand sewn or there's these very unique details to it. So this maintaining exclusivity is like the core of their identity, right? So anything that is sort of going to infringe upon that is really, they're going to be very aggressive against, and that may be mainly reactionary, right? So in this case, we can look at it two ways. From a sustainability perspective of you might have resellers, right? And these luxury brands have a lot of licensed resellers who are, I don't know, pay a fee or they're friends of the brand who are allowed, and granted this sort of reselling opportunity. And that again is managed and controlled because, they don't want to flood a market with all these goods or they don't want to be losing money. So there's an exertion of control. And I think with upcycling and with people, redoing their clothes or reworking their clothes, it just to them dilutes that brand. They lose the control, and they can't maintain sort of that exclusivity, right? Or someone else, their creativity is they're using the luxury brand and their creativity to sort of profit, and it excludes again the main brand. So it'll be an interesting conversation, but they're very aggressive. They're usually like very big brand houses who have lots of lawyers, but to your point, like in this environment, like sustainability. So and probably a person who's upcycling the clothes at home, they're sewing it for themselves and they're not selling it. Yeah. That would be okay. But it's when you're starting to make money and as an adjacency to the core brand is when they're going to get aggressive. So
yeah, well, and one of the things that came up, they've sent a cease and desist. I think the last one is foreign or something like that. Yeah. So there's all these legal battles that are happening, and that's not good for anybody either.
No.
But what they said is, they would be happy to collaborate with the brand.
Sure.
And I think that really is, where we need to go with this. If the brand is not ready to upcycle or be part of that circular economy, how do they collaborate with the ones that do want to do it, can do it, and therefore they can have a little bit of control? So I think there is, I don't know. I think there needs to be a little bit more collaboration here for us.
And a dialogue, right? Like, and appreciate that. Yeah, I know that's like, oh, this brand makes a bunch of money and who cares? And, but they are a brand for a reason. And there's a reason that people like them. And, if you do kind of, you're kind of going for the core of what makes them, right? Which is that distinction and exclusivity. Yeah. So like either try to collaborate with them or do it in a way that, you can do it, but you can't make money off of, being brand adjacent, right? Because you're effectively copying what they're doing, or you're sort of getting a leg up because of what they've already built and put investment into.
Yeah.
So
All right.
it's two ways, right?
Well, we are almost at the end. I just wanted to let
Mhm.
you know. So I was at TMSA. This has already happened. I'm flying home today. But we do have nominations, I think, still open till the end of this week for the Woman in Supply Chain Awards. If you have not nominated yourself, somebody from your team, please nominate them. Hurry up, because I think it's till the end of this week. And also take a look at joining me at the Woman in Supply Chain Forum in November as well, because I'd love to see you all there. Wow, I can't believe we made it right on time. Audrey, thanks so much for joining me today. You're going to be back with me next week, and I hope everybody has a great week ahead.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.